Welcoming back James Kobielus to the podcast. Speaking of data today, to discuss the best practices report that he just authored on monetizing data and analytics. Of course, Jim is the senior research director for data management at TDWI. Welcome back, Jim. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing good, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, getting into monetizing data and analytics, I think a first question that comes to mind is why is this a topic for a best practices report? What were you seeing to guide you in this direction?
Well, money makes the world go round, as we all know. That was actually a song from Cabaret a long time ago, dating myself. And our enterprises have been investing, well, in anything you do in business, of course, you hope to make money. And data and analytics are such a chief component of how business is done. Organizations everywhere are, at least in an abstract way, interested in knowing how they can use their data to make more money, to drive better business results, the quantitative bottom line. So, that's not an entirely flip answer, because basically what business intelligence and data mining and all these uses of data really try to do first and foremost is boost the bottom line through better business decisions from better data, higher quality data, from predictive models that have been built from data. So monetization is really the end game from the point of view of really everybody, especially at the higher levels, the C level. Well, now, how can we use data to do more than just do cool things? How can we do things that really help the shareholders?
Yeah, that makes sense. And it seems like there's been a shift in recent years in thinking around how to do this. So let's get into it here. What have you seen as the chief factors that contribute to success in data monetization?
Yeah, well, when we look at data monetization, and we do, in fact, in the best practices report that I authored, um, really there's really four what I call strategies for data monetization. And the first one may not at first glance sound like a key strategy for monetization of data, but in fact it is. It's data democratization, meaning giving everybody access in your business to data, to data-driven analytics, to the ability to do queries and produce reports and so forth, to use data and the fruits of data to make better business decisions. And you can look at the payoff from all of that, and most organizations do, in terms of qualitative factors, working smarter, but also quantitative factors. How can we make better business decisions that actually help us to boost sales, to hold on to customers, to upsell to existing customers, and so forth? So data democratization, giving everybody in the organization access to the best data that you have to help them make smarter decisions, no matter what it is they do, from the factory floor all the way up to the executive suite. That is a foremost strategy for monetization. But that's not the only, of course, because when we talk about data monetization, really there's essentially this maturity model where you move from data democratization, but also branch out in terms of how can we then operationalize data. That's a long-winded word, which alludes to everything I just mentioned, which is basically drive data into the business to drive better decisions, make processes more efficient, thereby reducing costs, boosting revenue. So data operationalization has been like one of the core strategies that organizations have used from the beginning of data in business to drive the quantitative bottom line, to boost, to improve results. And then when you look at the maturity journey for the enterprise in terms of monetization of data, many enterprises are looking to move beyond operationalization, though that is a core strategy, into data productization. Productization, it really takes us to the next step in terms of how do you use data and data-derived assets like machine learning models, artificial intelligence, to embed those in physical products like edge devices that are more intelligent, in cloud services, in mobile digital assistants that help your customers to do smart things all the time and so forth and so on. Many organizations are going down the road of productizing data and increasingly appointing people as data product managers to really to drive direct revenues from data and artificial intelligence built on data. Then the fourth strategy for data monetization is not in lieu of these other things, but an additional strategy, which is pretty much what the term data monetization alludes to strongly, which is data sale, essentially taking the data assets that you own and the data derived assets you own and selling those or licensing those or providing those for subscription access to customers directly, to monetize the data directly, use the data as a currency, essentially, that you can monetize directly. So getting back to your core question, what are the chief factors that contribute to success in data monetization? First and foremost, you need a strategic framework as an organization to understand these various strategies and to assess the degree of relevance of each of these strategies, their feasibility in your business. First and foremost, that requires top-down support from the executive level. That requires that you align your investments in data and analytics and so forth around these goals. If you're really committed to monetizing your data using all the tactics, that you're organizing your investments in the underlying platforms and databases and modeling tools and so forth to drive greater monetization of data. So there's the executive commitment. There is aligning your data analytics investments to support greater monetization. There's staffing and skills and teaming in your organization to boost monetization. In other words, over time, maybe you want to create a cadre of data product managers whose job it is to build and sell products and services that incorporate data, that incorporate data-driven analytics. And also, a big part of this, key factors that contribute to success, knowing when you're successful requires you have clear metrics that people are incentivized to boost, related to direct revenues from sale or resale or whatever data and data-derived products. So really, it's very much, you need KPIs to be defined. You need dashboards to be built and reporting to be done on an ongoing basis that reports on how successful you are in monetizing the data assets you have. There's a lot of other factors, but these are the core things that contribute to not only success in data monetization, but to knowing that you're successful because you can track it as a key performance indicator and report it up, ultimately to your shareholders and all your stakeholders so they know to what extent you're making best use of your data assets to drive quantitative results.
Amazing. So what criteria then should enterprises be using to assess the data monetization opportunities available to them?
Yeah, within the context of your business's goals and objectives, the core criteria, first of all, what data is legitimately yours to sell or to resell or to leverage for monetization opportunities. Many businesses, some of your core data is not entirely yours to sell. It's like personally identifiable information that you gather from your customers, depending on, the contractual relationships you have with your customers, depending on the regulatory framework and requirements that you have to live up to, conform with in terms of privacy protection. Maybe only a small piece of the data that you manage and own is actually yours to monetize directly. So do an inventory of what data assets do you have, which of those are really suitable for monetization. Either you leverage those to drive smarter decisions versus you build upon that data to build better products and services that may incorporate that data as an essential component. So what's yours to sell or resell or drive into monetization opportunities? Another key criterion is how much do you want to or need to monetize them? When we did the best practices report, we found that many organizations are on the road to data monetization in a more aggressive way in terms of data sales and also data productization. So really, it's one of the key criteria is to what extent are you already your team, you have the right roles and skills and teaming arrangements that can identify these opportunities, can sort through them, prioritize them, can then use all that that information as inputs to the planning process to decide whether you need to ramp up data productization directly. So fundamentally, then, to what extent are you have the people with the skills and the knowledge and the tools needed to pursue these monetization opportunities directly? And to what extent do you really want to bet your business on data monetization? Or to what extent will the revenues that you derive from these assets be a small piece of your overall revenue picture? So try to understand to what extent you want to turn yourself entirely into a data business, or to what extent the sale and resale and productization of data is a part of your overall portfolio of offerings, but not the entire game. Those are some of the key criteria you should consider as you go down this road.
Yeah, you touched on the roles and the teams, the arrangement of teams there. So then who should be leading the data monetization initiative?
Wow, really good question. So when we think about data monetization, well, who owns the data first and foremost, or who is the primary steward or custodian of the data in your organization? Who's responsible for the use or misuse of that data, and ultimately has to report to the relevant stakeholders, be they the customers who may be, the subject of the data, your CEO, your executive suite, reporting to regulators and so forth. So deciding who leads your data monetization initiative, a big part of that is who owns the data currently. Is it different lines of business? Do you have different lines of business who have their different data sets derived from different products and services and activities? Is there a clear focus of ownership and responsibility in each of those business units? Really, depending on whether you're a highly decentralized or centralized organization, you may invest data monetization responsibilities in business level personnel. There you might have multiple people leading data monetization initiatives in different parts of the business. Or you might decide as a business that you need to centralize it. Maybe conceivably data monetization as an overall push is under your CFO. Or conceivably it can be a cooperation between the CFO's organization and the chief information officer or chief data officer's organization. Because the chief data officer's people are closer to the actual management and governance of the data. So on some level, data monetization responsibility needs to be shared among the different units, with the CFO and maybe the chief privacy officer being also a lead player to make sure that you've got the appropriate security and governance safeguards that prevent your data product managers from trying to cash in on data that you don't have the rights to fully cash in on. You see, there might be multiple leaders, and probably should be, in a teaming arrangement ultimately.
That's very interesting. So you kind of described the chief factors and the criteria, and now who might be in charge. So then what would be, as you've seen, the first step on the enterprise data monetization journey?
Yeah, I alluded to this answer a little bit earlier, that the first step should probably be ask yourself, do we want to be a data business ultimately? Is data our core product or not? So the first step would be to decide whether it fits with basically your strategic mission as a business. If you're a business of the 21st century that has built itself digitally, and data has always been central to your overall product focus and engagement focus with your customers and so forth, then you've probably already taken the first key step, which is you're an all digital business running on data So monetizing your data assets is probably something that's been sort of built into the DNA of your business from the start. You've already taken that first step. If you're an older business that's wondering if you should take the next logical step on this journey towards greater monetization, that next logical step probably should be asking yourself, like I alluded at the start here, to what extent is any or all of the data that you manage and own amenable to greater monetization? And really, if you've already taken that step and determined that maybe half of the data that you have is in particular domains is open to greater monetization activities, the next logical step beyond that is to really identify, well, then who is responsible for driving your data monetization or productization journey? And really, in many ways, when you get to that point, then you have to ask yourself, do we need then to create a team of data product managers? And if so, the next step is to ask, well, who do they report to? If you've got a chief products officer and these are just new products that you hope to ship or whatever, release or provide to market in the near term, maybe your data product manager should report into that organization. So what I'm getting at is that there's the first step, depending on what kind of business you are and where you're at on the monetization journey already. And there's next logical steps, depending on sort of a decision tree that I sort of stepped through right now to decide how far do we need to go on this journey, how fast do we dare go on this journey? There you go.
Yeah. So then what would be, as far as the technology involved here, what would be the core set of enterprise platforms, tools, and or applications needed to sustain data monetization once you've got it up and running?
Right. Well, it's really in many ways the core data and analytics platforms and tools and apps you already have in place. Data lakes, data warehouses, or data lake houses, you need a place to store and manage and govern the data, but also you need, a core piece of data productization is building machine learning models and training them and then embedding those models in products and services. So, you need a data pipeline and a data platform, data ops, data engineering, data lakes on the one hand. But you also need a machine learning operationalization pipeline, often called ML ops, so that you are building and training and iterating through machine learning, deep learning, and other models in a in a consistent way that is aligned with how you're sourcing and preparing the data. Because what you're talking about really is building up a stack of tools that are data platforms, are also include machine learning operationalization platforms, but also the platform should include a teaming environment that enables specialists who are involved in the data productization and data monetization initiative to work together basically as a unified industrial process. That would generally include people like your data scientists, your data engineers, your machine learning engineers, data product managers, the people responsible for data governance to make sure that the data that is built into your products and services or that you're providing to customers is the best data, kept cleansed and augmented and so forth and so on to make it suitable for either direct sale or licensing or for incorporation into your AI or ML driven products. But another key thing is you need, if you're going to go deep down the productization and monetization route, you need channels to market for these products. And since these are data-driven digital products, many of them, consider either building your own internal data marketplace or leveraging externally run cloud data marketplaces as a core channel for marketing your data, your machine learning models, whatever. So consider you need cloud data marketplaces to go to market. You need, like I said, these pipeline tools for data and ML engineering, and they should be automated to a greater degree so that more and more of the processes need to stand up data products are built is basically a continuous industrial, almost like a factory, like an industrialization process, an assembly line. So you need basically AutoML and so forth to be built into these platforms. And also you need, as I've indicated, you need business intelligence or business analytics tools that can surface the metrics and KPIs that you're driving. So on an ongoing basis, and you can report through the management chain, to what extent are we being successful in deriving actual revenues and reducing costs and so forth from deployment of data products or from sale of data products and so forth. So clearly you need dashboarding and scorecarding and so forth, all of that capability to enable the success or lack thereof of your data monetization activities to be visible to all stakeholders. And governance is critically important. Ultimately, you're building data products that have the best data and the best fit ML models and so forth. And that really requires a stack of data governance and model governance capabilities to be built into this industrial, assembly chain, essentially, so that the appropriate controls on all of the data productization are always being enforced, and you have an audit trail to show that they're being enforced every stage of the way. So ultimately, when you sell your data-driven products, let's say it's a ML-driven digital recommender that's embedded in a mobile app that your customer uses to transact business with you. So you can be assured, your customer can be assured that what they're purchasing or accessing through your channels is high quality. There's quality assurance. So ultimately, this is a product, you have to stand behind it. You're going to warrant it, you're going to whatever. And so ultimately, yeah, you need those governance capabilities to make sure that in this whole assembly line, as it were, you're protecting the privacy of the data. You're building transparency and accountability into the data and the models. You're also you're doing all these functions in line with the relevant regulatory requirements related to data transparency and so forth and so on. So there's a complete audit trail that the end-to-end pipeline enables. Because ultimately, when your data products screw up in the field and people get hurt, or there's financial downsides to when your products fail to work as advertised, there's a complete audit trail to show that you did your best at every stage of the game to show due diligence in preparing and bringing these data products to market. So that's, once again, platforms, tools, and applications needed for sustainable data monetization, not as a one-off thing, but as a thing you're going to do on an ongoing basis that in many ways might become your core product.
Well, you almost beat me to my final question that I have for you here, Jim, which is about data governance, as we know, as a critical component here. So what would you, in your estimation, say, as far as governance is concerned, would be the most critical in regards to data monetization here for any institution that's already maybe on this journey?
Yeah, data quality management, DQM. So fundamentally, the data that you're selling to customers or that you're incorporating into the building and training of machine learning models that are built into products sold to customers. These are the best, and these are the best fit. And that also the data, the machine learning models are not being built in such a way as might introduce bias into the decisions that are automated by these data products and so forth. So you need data quality management to be baked into the governance. You need also data ethics and data transparency and machine learning transparency to be baked into the machine learning operationalization. Because ultimately, what it's coming down to is that more and more regulations are requiring that you protect privacy, but also that you also are mitigate against biases that might be introduced into your customers' lives based on them using your products and solutions that may be built, you hope not, but may have been built on machine learning models that are biased to favor particular socioeconomic economic or demographic groups. So ultimately, what you need to do is to make sure. We also did recently a best practices report on responsible data analytics that I recommend that people listening to this podcast go back and check out the TDWI research BPR on responsible data analytics. Can you check off all those boxes in terms of governance? Privacy, bias, transparency, accountability, ethics, sustainability for that matter. In terms of are your data products being built and trained on machine learning platforms that are not spewing an unnecessary carbon footprint into the environment? Things like that. Your customers, I mean, like if your customers, let's say you're a coffee shop and you're boasting that all of the beans have been, responsibly cultivated, wherever, and that the people who are cultivating them are paid a fair wage or whatever it might be. Your customers are probably going to at some point request the same thing about your data products. Are you building your data products on platforms that are not contributing to global warming and that kind of thing? Keep these kind of considerations in mind as you build out your data monetization platforms and processes. Ultimately, are your data products good for the planet? And really, it's not just that your company's making money hand over fist, but that you're not impoverishing the planet in the process. I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind as you build out these practices.
Well, that's a very interesting thought there. And I know that's becoming more and more a point of consideration for these businesses as they move forward here. Well, Jim, I want to talk to you more about this, but I don't want to, have you go through the entirety of the report. We want people to go and take a look at it. They can certainly find it at tdwi.org under our research and resources. Please go ahead and take a moment to find it, download it, and explore. But Jim, really appreciate you coming on here today and sharing your thoughts.
An audiobook, Andrew, and I'll read this as an audiobook. How about that? If you don't want to hear my voice drone on for an hour and a half, I'm happy to do that.
Well, we're going to get that audiobook out as soon as possible. No, Jim, but in all seriousness, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and appreciate you coming on the podcast to share your insights here. So thanks so much.